right, here we are. Hello, everybody who's here with us as we get started. Hey, Melissa, how are you doing today?
Hey, Katie, I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm so excited to have you here. You and I have chatted before about your Sinclair Method journey in an interview. And so we're going to kind of pick up where we left off with that and dive into some of the challenges and things that I know you went through on your Sinclair Method journey that a lot of people relate to. So we'll talk about that. Just want to say for people who are watching, welcome. Thank you for joining us. If you have questions for Melissa or for myself or just in general about the Sinclair Method, you can put it in the comments. We will do our best to get to them. And I think that's all. So why don't we just kick things off, Melissa? For people who maybe they didn't see your past interview that we did, I think that was a couple months ago now, or just people who could use a refresher. Could you start by just introducing yourself a bit and telling us a little bit about your personal history with drinking alcohol and what led you to TSM?
Sure. I'll try and do the abbreviated version.
I know.
For me, alcohol was always a part of my life. Growing up, it was at every family function, every event. I mean, it was a way to celebrate. It was a way to drown your sorrows. It was essentially part of my family, part of my life. It was always there. Good days, bad days, just every memory. That's every life event. That's what I remember it was always such a focus. So it was not it was not out of the ordinary that I became a drinker as well. It was something that was just ingrained in our family, and so I probably started drinking more in like high school, and it was just something that continued and progressed. And once I got to my 40s, your tolerance goes up. You've been drinking for a long time, and I just kind of hit a point in my life where I couldn't keep doing it. I couldn't keep drinking 2 bottles of wine every night and waking up and going to work and just repeating that cycle over and over and over again. And I really just figured there had to be something else out there. There had to be something more to life. There had to be something that could help me, just move forward and get rid of alcohol and do better. And I did a lot of research before I found the Sinclair Method.
Yeah, and something that's interesting about your story too, I remember from last time, is you had the bariatric surgery. Is that right?
I did, yeah. So I had surgery. Let's see, it was 2014, and the great thing is they tell you, you have to go through psych evaluation and everything else. But I feel like once somebody reaches that point, it's the same thing, kind of the way I felt with TSM. Like you're kind of in desperation mode. Like something needs to change. You don't know how to change it, and so even doing like this like eval, it's like, okay, I know what answers they're looking for. Like I need this surgery. I need help. And they tell you like don't drink for at least 6 months, no alcohol, whatever. And that was fine for like 6 weeks, and then I just which is unfortunate because you figure at 6 weeks you probably haven't had a drink long enough to it should have been easier to keep going. But so yeah, I started drinking after my surgery, which not only really inhibited the weight loss that I should have been experiencing, but your body metabolizes alcohol different. You have different levels of intoxication, and it just totally affects you different. And I mean, there were times. Plus, I couldn't eat as much either. So it was like, oh, if I drink a bottle of wine, I might not even want dinner. So
Yeah.
your whole nutrition and everything changed because of that too.
And I've heard that from clients I've had who did the bariatric as well. It's like alcohol can take up so much room in their stomach that it's hard for them to eat. And so, kind of one of the golden rules of the Sinclair Method is really to eat before you drink. That can really help people. So I know for folks who have the bariatric ban, that can be extra challenging, just because there is such limited room in the stomach.
Yeah, my like routine was like, get off of work, come home, pour a glass of wine. And then, at some point I would start making dinner, but by the time I was done cooking dinner, I was probably done with the first bottle of wine. So I wasn't really that hungry, and I'm trying to like pick at stuff and whatever. But yeah, there was definitely not a lot of nutritional foods going into my diet. It was more like, which Sauvignon Blanc was the coldest in the fridge, I guess.
Yes. Oh my
um,
gosh. Yes.
but yeah, that really like takes over because I was never necessarily identified as somebody who had like an emotional eating problem, but without with without I think anybody who has issues with food or alcohol or drugs, you're trying to fill something that's missing. And when you have weight loss surgery, you can't do that with food. So you're still looking for something to fill that void with. And alcohol is the next easy progression to that because, it doesn't take up space. It's easy to just keep, downing whatever you're drinking. And unfortunately, as you and I both know, the alcohol just, it takes over. It takes, you're not in the driver's seat when you're drinking that much. It's not, we're not making conscious choices to continue drinking at that level.
Yeah. And did you have alcohol problems before the surgery? I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean, I drank. I'm sure that's what contributed to me being, over 300 pounds at the time was because it was, I was living on beer and pizza.
Mm.
So I'm sure that had a lot to contribute to that just because it was, party. Yeah, I was drinking all the time then too. Just not, I feel like it wasn't maybe I was probably not a daily drinker. But after the surgery, it definitely progressed to the point where I became one.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I find so interesting about your story with the Sinclair method is you were kind of like that typical case that we'll see from people who are, they've been on the method for a while and maybe they're not really seeing the progress that they see others having or that they thought they would have had. And so, can you tell us a little bit about what your journey was like when you got started on the Sinclair method and for the duration,
Sure.
the time you were on it?
Absolutely. So I actually started the Sinclair Method December 1st, 2019. And from December 1st, 2019 until September 30th, 2020, I only had 2 alcohol-free days. I was compliant 100%. There was not a single day that I didn't take my pill and wait at least an hour to drink. But there were 2 alcohol-free days, and that was it. And, you know, what was that? 9, 10 months time.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm in the groups on Facebook and different stuff. And I'm like, okay, I'm taking this. And I was at the point where my favorite drink was this Sauvignon Blanc, but I was like choking it down. I was still drinking it, but I would take a big sip and then chase it with water because I just had to like get the drinks in. And I just had this like moment where I was like, how ridiculous is this that I'm like chasing my alcohol with water because I can't even stand the taste of it, but I still am like drinking it. And I happened to stumble upon Annie Grace's book, This Naked Mind. And she does a program for, like different alcohol experiments. And so I signed up to do a 30-day sober October. That was it. It was like you were going to get daily emails and, there's a Facebook group. But the whole point was to not drink for 30 days. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try this, and wasn't that hopeful about it, but I gave it a shot. And so the first couple of days, like I had no alcohol cravings. None, zero at all. My issue was once 5 o'clock rolled around and I was going home to cook dinner, I didn't know what to do with myself because I went home and had a few glasses of wine before I started dinner, drank while I was cooking dinner. And so it was like, oh man, how do I fill this time? Because, that's all I'm thinking about is like, oh, I'm not drinking. It's like, your mind doesn't have the capacity to understand like the positive or negative aspect of it. All you're thinking about is don't drink, and your brain's hearing drink, 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 drink. So I had to change my routine a little bit. So I started stopping at the store to get groceries on my way home from work for that night's dinner. Instead of doing like ahead of time, I would go get what I needed to get. And that way, by the time I got home, I didn't have time to sit down and relax. I needed to get dinner cooked and ready and everything else. So, but, again, I had already been on TSM for 10 months. and the cravings were gone. So by I would say after the first week, it really wasn't that difficult. It was just weird. It was an adjustment I needed to make. And then, when I set out, I intended to moderate. When I started TSM, I was going to moderate. Um, and I just, I hit my 30 days and I was like, well, I'm just going to keep going and see what happens. And it's like the farther away it got and the longer time passed, the more I realized I just didn't have a reason to moderate because I didn't have a desire to drink alcohol anymore. And during that time, I did a lot of research on the effects alcohol has on us, and even just from the marketing aspect of how the alcohol companies promote and pretty much push alcohol on us. And it was like a light bulb kind of went off. So I will never say never. TSM is amazing and it works. But for me personally, I really don't think I will ever pick up a drink again. I just don't see, I don't see a benefit to it at all.
That's so great. And I'm in the same kind of boat where I just kept going longer and longer without drinking. And I was like, I can't really be bothered to drink. But yeah,
Yeah.
never say never, but I'm like, no, doesn't sound
Yeah.
good.
I mean, like all I think about now is like, if I just think about all the effects of, things we ignore to get that high. And now I'm like, oh, those are things I don't want to experience. Like the high is not worth going through how crappy you're going to feel.
Yep, exactly. And that's like all due to the Sinclair method. It's interesting because you said when you had 6 weeks off for your surgery, it's like you would think you wouldn't want to drink after that. But it's like for me, I would always like want to drink more. But the Sinclair method is the opposite for most people. It's like the longer you go, we no longer experience that alcohol deprivation effect. So
Yeah.
we feel like it just really becomes a distant memory.
Yeah. I mean, it's really just remarkable. I mean, I even remember watching Claudia's TED talk and I was like, is this we all have doubt in our minds for all kinds of things, but I was like, come on, does this actually work? And then to think that there's something out there that works that isn't costing tens of thousands of dollars that I have to go. I mean, I was one of those people that was really nervous. I didn't go through my health insurance because I was like, I didn't want to have an issue. So I went through um, C3 Foundation and found a telemed doc that was, I mean, it wasn't that expensive. And after the first appointment, I don't even think I paid that much, but, I didn't even get the medication through my insurance. I did GoodRx and went to a pharmacy I never shopped at and all kinds of stuff, which I laugh about now. But, for considering the cost versus the tens of thousands of dollars that people spend and aren't successful at quitting using is just, I mean, more people need to try it because it works.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. And I want to say quickly for people who are watching, I know we've had some more people join. So if you have questions for Melissa or for myself or anything about TSM, please feel free to put them in the chat. Melissa, she's through her own experience. I think she has a lot of wisdom to offer people. So I wanted to just go back to the moment you were describing so vividly of like chasing your white wine with the water because you hated the taste so much. So like what was driving you to continue to drink even though you hated the taste? Like what was that inside you to keep like that drinking going even though it was like so not pleasurable for you anymore?
I wish I mean, I think that's just the hold it has over people because I really just, I mean, it was bad. It was like, what are you doing? I mean, it didn't even taste good. It was like, um, I mean, it just didn't. And I don't know why I kept doing it for so long. And I don't even know how, I guess I don't even know how long that happened, but I do remember towards the end where it just didn't taste good and it wasn't pleasurable, but I just kept doing it. Like, why? Why am I still doing this?
And I think it's like you were saying, like with the habit piece, it's so strong and like we are using it as a coping tool. And it's almost like, well, we don't know what else to do with our time. And I think, like you said, that first week of being alcohol free for you was the hardest. And for a lot of people, alcohol free days on TSM, getting the first one or the first couple, in my experience, can be pretty darn intimidating just because historically alcohol-free days have been really challenging for a lot of people. And so I think that there can be this, fear around them in some sense. But you, I mean, coming from someone who was on the Sinclair Method for almost a year, hardly any alcohol-free days, like there's a lot of people who are in that situation now, or, who have been on the Sinclair Method and they're feeling hopeless, or they're wondering if it's going to work for them. And I'm just wondering, like, at that state, like before you started the Annie Grace program, were you feeling like, oh, I don't know if this is going to work for me, I'm going to throw in the towel? Or were you seeing progress or changes despite, very little alcohol-free days?
I mean, I saw the changes in not liking the taste of it, and just not even, I mean, the way it affects your brain being different, where you're just, the buzz isn't the same. You're not getting that same reward system. So I noticed those kind of changes, but I still didn't, I don't know. It really, it's that habit that's the hard part. And that's the thing, is with anything you do, it just is, there's work that needs to be done. And so taking the pill is the first step, and that's great, but there has to be some mindfulness there, and just some, I think once we get to that point where we're being compliant and we're taking the pill and we're drinking an hour later and we're still drinking, I think a lot of that is just, having an honest chat with yourself and realizing, like, hey, I'm doing this for a reason, and it's time for me to take the next step. And it's kind of like that. It's that next step. That's, for me, was the biggest jump, because I think part of me deep down realized that it was goodbye. It was like, I think deep down I knew that I probably didn't want to drink anymore, and I wasn't going to. So, after having been in my life my entire life, that's it's still a relationship. So, I could have been in a room full of 1,000 people or a room by myself, but if alcohol was there, I was never alone. I always had my wine with me. So I think that was a big thing that I had to deal with. It's like losing your best friend, because alcohol literally was always there. Every event. I mean, there's even 5Ks, and you go run your race and you get a beer at the end, and so it's like, it's literally everywhere. And so there's that aspect of it. And also, for me, I'm a pretty outgoing person. I like to have fun, and everyone, it kind of expects that from me. So it was really challenging, because in your head, you think, well, I can't be any fun if I'm not drinking. So just being able to manage that and realize that that's not who I am, that I don't need that to go out and have fun and make people laugh.
Yeah, and you hit on two really important things that I think are crucial for changing our relationship with alcohol and the Sinclair Method, that I think can be so easily overlooked by people. The first is that we really are changing our relationship to it, which I used to think sounded a little cheesy, but it's so true, because alcohol becomes this confidant that we turn to in life for good days, bad days, and everything in between. And so it becomes this intimate relationship that we have with it. And as we go on this method, we really need to change that dynamic. And then another thing you mentioned is, like, I'm not that kind of person anymore, which, like, broadly speaking, it's like we have to change our identity around alcohol. So if we're identified as someone who's the life of the party, or a wine lover, or someone who needs wine in the evening to, relax, it's like that identity is going to continue to play out, even if naltrexone is working in the background and maybe our brain is close to extinction. It's like, well, if we still believe that, we need to have drinks out with friends, or we need to have it each night to unwind, we're going to keep doing that, because our thoughts create our beliefs, which then create our actions. So it's like those nuanced little things that I think that, we can easily overlook, because our thoughts can be on such an
That's
autopilot.
big. See, you said something that's key that made me think of Tony Robbins, because he talks a lot about belief systems and changing your belief systems. And I mean, some of our belief systems about ourselves have been ingrained in us since we were 5 years old. So that's a big part of kind of a lot of work I'm doing in my life now, is just changing those belief systems about yourself, because not only did other people label you, you've labeled yourself in some way, shape, or form on what you are in this world. And just because someone says you're an alcoholic or you have a problem with alcohol or whatever, that doesn't define you. And that's not who you are as a person. The problem is that once we get to the point where we're seeking out treatment and TSM to be able to figure out how to end that part of our addiction, we already believe so many bad things about ourselves. It's not just quitting the drinking, it is changing your mindset. And I wish more people understood how powerful our own thoughts were. Because if you want to change something in your life, that's where it has to start, is with you. And I'm not going to believe in you if you don't believe in yourself. So a big part of it is changing your mindset and figuring out ways to work on that are going to help support your journey in TSM.
Absolutely. And it's something that is so just used everywhere today, like mindset and, mindfulness and things like that. But it's so crucial and it's something that's said so often that I think we can just overlook it or ignore it. Or at least I know I did in my own Sinclair Method journey, not realizing how much I was like identified and wrapped up with alcohol. But I totally agree. And it's like recognizing those thoughts and beliefs that play out on autopilot, especially when we have alcohol use disorder, because we can be in the habit of just these automatic thoughts that really cause us to beat ourselves up. And I think that causes us then to, continue in self-sabotaging type cycles and drinking more than we want to, and not doing things that can set ourselves up for success like you did. You're like, I'm going to take this 30-day alcohol-free challenge because it's like you wanted more for yourself. Like where you had been on TSM was no longer in alignment with like this vision you had for your life that you wanted. And so it's like, that didn't just happen by accident necessarily. I bet there were like days, weeks, or even months leading up to that where like, you were probably, getting excited about your future or becoming unsatisfied with where you were. And I was wondering if there's anything you want to like say about what was leading up to that with regards to like the mindset work you had been doing or been wanting to do.
Well, big thing for me. So I mentioned like 2014, I had my weight loss surgery. Probably like 2 months after that, I relocated from the Chicagoland area to the Phoenix area. And when I moved to the Phoenix area, I actually took classes to get my real estate license. But I never sat for my exams. I never did that. I just, got a job and started working and whatever. So, but that was something I'd always wanted to do. And it was something that was always in the back of my mind. And, couple years went by, I'm here working, I met my husband, got married, all this other stuff. But that was still in the back of my mind as something I wanted to do. And I kept thinking about, what that looked like for me as an entrepreneur and a businesswoman. And the one thing that just kept popping into my head was that I cannot run the type of business that I want to be successful and still be drinking the way I was. It just was not going to work. And that was a big part of my journey, because I decided that in order to focus on my business, one had to go. And so that was a big thing that led up to that for me. Just knowing that, I didn't want to be that realtor that at 7:00 at night, my client calls and I don't even remember having the conversation with them. And it's a very, it can be a very high stress job, but it can be pretty high profile. I mean, I'm responsible for legal contracts and making decisions, and I don't want to jeopardize that just because for alcohol, So that was a huge thing for me, too, as part of my journey, was kind of forward thinking, like, what was my vision? What do I want for my life? What do I want for my business? What do I want for my future? And alcohol just didn't have a place in there anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally relate to what you're saying, because it becomes this stumbling block where it's like, it won't allow us to get where we want to go. And I think that's why having a vision for our future, like you just said, is so important, because for many of us, like when I was struggling with alcohol for 10 years, it was hard to even think about my future, because I was living for my next drink. For every day, it's like, am I going to drink tonight? Am I not going to drink tonight? Do I have wine? It was just like I was constantly existing in the cycle of chasing that next drink and chasing the buzz. And I noticed with the Sinclair Method, with the clarity it started to bring to me, I could start to actually get excited about and set goals for my future, and really wanted to chase some projects and things that had deep meaning for me, because I didn't want to just exist to collect a paycheck. And then, I would just drink to cope with that because I hated my job, because I was just going
Right.
to get a paycheck. But it's like talking about mindset shift. It really is a different mindset shift, because if we've been drinking for years or decades, and we've really, like I was like living for that next drink and just looking forward to my wine ritual every night or whatever our habits are, it's hard to dream about our future and really look forward to that. And then before we know it, 5 or 10 years goes by and we're like, wow, nothing much has changed. And, here I am still. And so I think that's such an important point that you bring up about, really getting clear on that future that you wanted for yourself and realizing what needed to be sacrificed in order to get there.
Yeah, I mean, I came from a place like in my 20s. I also had, when I was younger, my mom passed away at a very early age. I was 11 years old. My parents had been getting divorced at the time. I had a good childhood, but like there were traumatic things that happened that definitely contributed to, I'm sure, my increased drinking. So having to go back and deal with that stuff too. We all have trauma and we all deal with it in different ways, but being able to acknowledge that and just not let it define you and move forward from that too. Because I mean, that's another thing we all have to look at. Like you don't just wake up one day and be like, oh my gosh, alcohol is this hold over me and I drink every day. I mean, there are things that happen. It's progression. And the progression isn't just the addiction or what alcohol does to your brain. It's because there's something else that you need to address. So it's not just treating your odd, it's treating whatever else that you have that you're trying to cover up with that. So it is work. And there are days that aren't easy either, but it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was going to read a couple of the questions in here. This person says a serious question and a silly question. How soon can you stop drinking alcohol? And then the funny question is, are you ticklish? And if so, where? You don't have to answer that if you don't want to, but how
Um,
soon can you stop drinking alcohol? I'm assuming they mean on the Sinclair Method. I wondered what you wanted to say to that.
I mean, I'm sure you probably could, I would imagine, fairly quickly. I see a lot of people in some of the Facebook groups I'm in that have pretty good success. I mean, I would say probably, my guess is it's going to take at least a couple of months before the medication is actually doing the work for you. And I know there's like a honeymoon period wherever, you start off taking this medication, and I've seen a couple people mention some of the side effects and things like that. So yeah, it's a little harder to drink when you're nauseous and things like that. But overall, I mean, I definitely think you probably need to give it at least 3 months to be doing TSM and being compliant before you can really see. And one of the other things I didn't mention before, but I tracked my drinks also, and I think that's a huge key because, um, when you asked me a question about if I had noticed any other changes, and I know I mentioned like chasing it with water and everything, but if I go back and look at my timeline of not drinking, there are ups and downs, but you notice there's an entire downward trajectory over the entire period of time until that last day where it just drops off and it's nothing.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing for those days when you're sitting there and you're like, oh my gosh, I've been doing TSM for 8 months and I'm drinking every day and nothing's happening. And you know what? If you're tracking your drinks, that's, that's something measurable that you can look and say, you know what? I might still be drinking every day, but I'm drinking 30 units of alcohol a week and I used to drink 80.
Yeah.
So I think finding ways to, show your progress and see that you're actually, being successful, and then even rewarding those things, because you're going to find other differences too. I mean, you sleep better, you feel better, you might actually want to go for a walk or be outside or do different things, try something new. There's all kinds of stuff.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and something I realized, it's like, when we're drinking, like, alcohol, because it hijacks our brain essentially, we're equating that to, like, pleasure above everything else. Like, in order to go for a hike, I needed alcohol. In order to go to a birthday party, I needed alcohol because it's hijacked our pleasure center. But as that gets balanced with TSM, I realized, oh my gosh, there's a whole world of, like, amazing things to do out there. And it sounds so cheesy, but there's just so many wonderful things to do when we're not stuck in the trap of over drinking all of the time. And as soon as we get out and start experiencing those things, it just builds and builds. And I think that's why getting alcohol-free days are so important on TSM. And if someone's been on the method a long time and they haven't had any yet, it's just like, how can we work to get you there? Because getting those consistent alcohol-free days where you're seeing yourself experience pleasure from other things, and not having the naltrexone in your system, I mean, I just think that builds and builds over time. And your story is like a perfect example. And I'm not saying everyone has to go out and do a 30-day alcohol-free challenge, but I think even just like you saying after the first week, you were like noticing what a big difference it
Yeah,
was
or
making.
even, start with baby steps, like maybe you're just not going to drink on Wednesdays, whatever it is. Like start small and build up to it, but at least just I guarantee even making the smallest effort, especially if you've been on TSM for a while, it's not going to be as scary or as difficult as you think. And it's not, that's the thing. We're so driven by fear. And I just got done reading this book, and it talks so much about how, we rely on fear and we rely on faith. And unfortunately, they're not very good bedfellows. So, it's like you're either driven, your decisions are driven by those two things. And it's a lot easier to have faith than it is to be scared and fearful all the time. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And I love, like you just said, like, just don't drink on Wednesdays. Like, just start somewhere small. And I think that's so important. And for me, I'm huge. I'm like a broken record, like to tell people to reward yourself when you're not drinking. Because I have people, they're like, oh, I couldn't drink because I was out running errands or I was working late. It's like, okay, well, that doesn't make you look forward to a drinking day, non-drinking day very much, because it's like just work and there's like nothing exciting happening. But if we're having those days and then we're using it as an excuse to really reward ourselves and do something fun, it's going to make it extra memorable and reinforcing in a positive way.
yeah. I see one of the comments is about not having too many side effects, but having anxiety and sleep issues. I had those issues as well. My particular doctor that prescribed now for me gave me, not, it was not narcotic stuff. It was just but ask whoever you're getting a prescription from, because they might have some solutions to help you with that. I was actually diagnosed with high anxiety as part of this whole process, which definitely alcohol, as much as we think it helps us relax, kind of contributes to the anxiety. But yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with asking your provider for something to help you address some of the other side effects or issues you're having from now. I see a lot of people also having issues with the sugar, because your body turns alcohol to sugar, and everyone's worried about, oh, I'm going to gain weight, I can't eat all this sugar, all I want is candy, or whatever the case may be. And I will just say this, as someone who's struggled with weight, I understand the fear of, like, just having all these sugar cravings and wanting to eat cookies all the time. But I think that it's very temporary. And in my mind, what I told myself was I was going to allow myself that cookie or whatever it was because it wasn't a drink, and that I would deal with the sugar part after I was comfortable enough with the fact that I wasn't drinking. And that's what happened. And it did take a little time. I mean, it was like, those crumble cookies are very delicious. But over time, it does dissipate. And I think once your body actually starts to heal from alcohol too, and it's like back in homeostasis and your liver is doing its job, and you're, filtering out all the other toxins, because your body's not only focused on having to filter out the alcohol, you definitely start to see changes in your metabolism too. So I tell people all the time that are like struggling with, oh, the sugar cravings are also awful, give in to them a little bit. Like, give yourself some grace. We didn't all wake up, 30 years later, like as a daily drinker. It took time to get there, and it takes time to get away from that. So.
Absolutely. I think that's so true. And I did the exact same thing. It was like that was me kind of like stepping down from alcohol, was to allow myself to have those treats, and then I could step down further from there. And I just want to encourage people as well, like, look into supplements. There's so many great supplements that can help curb alcohol cravings, and recognizing the fact that when we're over drinking for so long, we can be depleted of essential minerals and nutrients. And so I just think supplements are an important part of this process as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I took a lot of supplements too, just
You
to
did.
to nurture my body too. I mean, just alcohol depletes a lot from your system. So just to be able to give that back,
Oh, yeah. And okay, so earlier you were mentioning the side effects you had. Did you have any other side effects on the naltrexone, or what was that like for you?
In the beginning, I had the normal, like I know a lot of people mentioned stomach upset. So I started with half a pill the first 2 weeks, and I was kind of nauseous, probably for like the first week or so, and then bumped up to the regular 50 milligrams. But after it was after like the first 2 weeks, I didn't really have many side effects other than, and then like the anxiety and the sleep issues. I mean, I can't even say that was a direct result of the now so much as a lot of it could have just been underlying before, and alcohol masked that. I can definitely say that I was at a point where I just thought like, oh, women in their 40s don't sleep through the night. Like I really just thought like, that was normal, and turns out it's not normal.
Yeah.
So it's actually nice to get a full night's sleep. Like you don't actually have to get up to pee every night. It's been really nice. Like I never realized how run down I was and how worn out, and even how I took a photo on October 1st, 2020, and then I took a photo October 1st, 2021, and both in the morning, both very similar. Like I didn't try and make myself look better the year later or anything, but the difference is pretty remarkable just to see like sleep deprived, hungover. I probably weighed like 50 pounds more versus like a year later where it's, you see it in your eyes and your skin tone and, yeah. So I recommend that too. Like anybody, you don't have to show it to anyone, but at least do it for yourself. Take that picture, track your progress. That's a hard part too, is like anybody who's watching, if you need someone to talk to, just real life, find me on Facebook, look me up. It was hard for me. I didn't tell people. My husband knew, but I didn't want to fail, and I didn't want to go running around telling people that I was trying this thing to quit drinking, and what if it didn't work, and then I have to admit I was a failure, and then I was so worried about what other people were going to think that and I feel like alcohol is just one of those things where it's different than any other drug, that it's so much more widely accepted, so it's so much weirder when you tell people that you don't drink. There must be something wrong with you. So I don't know. It was very, it was a challenge for me because I felt like I was doing it in secret almost. So if there's anybody that feels that way and just needs someone to talk to who understands what it's like trying to navigate that and not, want to broadcast it to the world, I'm always happy to talk to people and help out.
Awesome. And someone in here is asking about what supplements you took. And I'll share ones I recommend as well, but are there ones you wanted to mention?
So, well, I took a lot of B vitamins and B vitamin complex. I took milk thistle. Somebody mentioned melatonin. I did take melatonin. I can't remember the name of the other one. Those were big ones, though. A lot of the B vitamins to kind of replenish.
Yeah, B vitamins are a big one. I know that can get depleted when we overdrink. For me, magnesium, zinc. Someone mentioned fish oil in here. High doses of fish oil have been clinically proven to help heal the brain, because when we drink, it kind of also can atrophy our brain over time. Unfortunately, there's some really interesting brain scans you can see online that are out there. So fish oil helps to make our brains think more clearly. L-glutamine is one that helps with alcohol cravings. But there are so many. There's actually a book, I think it's called A Vitamin Cure for Alcoholism. They have some good resources in there that kind of talk about the essential vitamins that we all need that can be depleted when we overdrink. Vitamin C is another one. Yeah, good question. Yeah, and just grace to glory. Thank you so much for your comments. I'm so glad that you've got on the method. You said, recently I had a couple of excessive drinking bouts and realized it had been so long since I problem drank, I'd actually forgotten to take the medication. I went out and got a new script yesterday. Yeah, that's so important to keep taking the medication if you are going to continue to drink on the Sinclair method. I actually just saw that come up today. I think in a forum online about someone who was asking about that. And Melissa, if you were going to drink again, would you take the naltrexone beforehand?
Yep, 100%. I mean, I haven't, since I quit, but I have it. It's probably expired. I have probably a full prescription somewhere in my house, and I have my goofy little keychain with probably 2 now at the bottom of it, which I probably wouldn't try taking those ones because they're kind of gross. But yeah, I would not. If I ever decide to, I would absolutely be compliant, 100%.
Yeah, same. And I've heard from maybe less than 5 people in the last 4+ years who've been able to return to drinking again without naltrexone after extinction. But those are more of like the unicorn type examples, because way more, like that's maybe like 2% of people. And, the other 98% are people I've heard from that if they do that, they can relearn the alcohol use disorder, whether it's in a couple of weeks or a couple of months. So same for me. I haven't drank in 3.5 years, but if I did, I would definitely take the naltrexone beforehand because I know it protects me. And I never want to go back to where I was before.
I can't, well, and most people say it's so much worse. It's like one of those things, like you start again, you're going to end up right back where you were at, if not worse. And they say it happens so quickly too. For me, even with the naltrexone, it's just not worth the risk, because even if I take my pill, I'm still going to have, I'm still going to be flushed. I'm still going to get a headache. I'm still not going to sleep well. And it just, I'm still going to be drinking empty calories. And it's like, when I add up all those things in my head, it's just not worth it,
Yeah. Yep, exactly. I totally agree. You start to become really sensitive to alcohol when you're not drinking very much at all. So it just, you really feel it and the effects on your body. I know the last couple of times I drank, I was like, ugh, like I don't like this. I don't like the buzz anymore. It's just amazing how the medication works in that way.
Yeah. And like you said, I mean, there's a lot more to life out there, that doesn't require alcohol to experience. And coming from a place where I feel like I had to plan everything around that, it was like, oh, what are we going to drink that day? What are, like, just there's, so many more adventures to go on. And it's just, I wish I could take how I feel and just give it to somebody, even if it was for 5 minutes, just to show you, like, it is worth it. Keep going.
Absolutely. And it's something you really have to taste and experience for yourself to know it. But TSM does give us those little glimpses of it. Like if we have an alcohol-free day that doesn't feel like a challenge. And oftentimes I'll hear people say, oh my gosh, I slept so well last night. Like I haven't slept that well. And then those benefits we start to reap from changing our drinking habits, those start to kind of balance out the scale. And alcohol, we begin to think twice about, is it worth it to have that drink tonight? Or would I rather have amazing sleep and wake up feeling restored tomorrow? Um, just to briefly touch on the people who may return to drinking again without naltrexone, or people who maybe are near extinction and they kind of sabotage their success for whatever reason. I just want to speak to that because I think it highlights the importance of what we were talking about earlier in the call, and like habit change and lifestyle change and seeking out things that give us deeper meaning in life. Because I think if we're not doing that, what I've seen happen is, like, if someone has a stressful event in life or, something happens, God forbid, they can return to drinking again without the naltrexone, or they just see their drinking spike and they're not really sure why. And in my opinion, and I want to hear what you have to say, Melissa, it's like, because they haven't done the work, the traditional quote unquote recovery work, to really heal, the reasons why we're using alcohol and to put alcohol in its proper place and no longer see it as that coping tool, like we said earlier, really changing the relationship that we have with it. And so I'm curious, like, what your thoughts are on that, because I imagine, since you quit drinking, there's probably been really stressful days or circumstances or situations in your life and you haven't reverted back to it. So, like, what's the difference between your ability to do that or someone else who may, be tempted to go back to alcohol and use it as that tool as they had before?
I think it's 100% your reaction and how you just look at things. And it takes a while to get to that point, but 100% it's just how you choose it. It's just work you have to do to get there, though. I wish there was an easy way to be like, okay, something really crappy just happened. I'm just going to keep on going with a smile on my face. And we all know that's not possible. Like, I have bad days too. You know, I have stuff going on right now where I'm like, I just want this deal to close. I'm so done with these people. But it's all how you react to it. You know what? Focus on the things, and I'm gonna premise this. Everybody has their thoughts on like AA and stuff. I am not a proponent of it. It doesn't, for me, it doesn't work. But there are like two things that I will take away from AA. One is one day at a time, even if it's 1 minute at a time, break it down. Like, I'm not gonna drink on Wednesdays, whatever. The other is the serenity prayer. And you know what? It's one thing to sit there and just recite that prayer, but it's another to actually look into the meaning of it. And I'm not even talking about for people who are agnostic or not religious. It's not even about God or an actual prayer. It's think about what it's actually saying. Deal with the things that you are in control of, because you're not in control of there are so many things that we react to that we are not in control of anyway, that trigger our drinking, that are completely unnecessary. So a lot of it is just changing your perspective and your mindset and having to kind of step away from a situation. So, maybe the next time you're in a stressful situation, instead of just immediately reacting, and it's not easy. It takes time. I'm not saying this is easy just to be like, oh, you know what? This is a stressful situation. I'm going to stop and analyze it. But if you can at least start getting in the habit of looking at things and deciding if it's something that you can control, and only, reacting to those things versus letting everything derail you, that's a really good place to start.
Yeah, and I often refer to it as like building our coping muscle, kind of like when we go to the gym. If we go 1 or 2 times, we're not going to see a difference. But if we keep going back and seeing ourselves experience, tough situations and not numbing out with alcohol or trying to cope or, do something differently, each time we do that, it's building that muscle. And so we get better and better at it. We build more resilience toward it. But that consistency and repetition is the most important thing. I think sometimes people want to have an overnight fix and like a quick fix of just like, okay, let me just get over this today. But it's really about that consistent effort, I think. And really, someone's asking in here, what's the best way to start doing the hard work on what's driving the habit? Any recommended reading? I have this Naked Mind. And I want to hear from you, Melissa, but just to, answer quickly to that is like, I've read so many habit change books because that's what I needed on TSM, was like, I knew that the habit was playing out and I'm like, okay, how do I change these habits? Atomic Habits is a great one that I recommend. But
Atomic Habits is one of my
yeah,
favorites. Yeah, I saw somebody mention Untethered Soul. That is an incredible book. I have a list of probably 40 plus books that I'm reading right now. I'm not reading right now, that I'm working my way through. But the quitting drinking it's just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many other things waiting for you on the other side, and people have no idea. And it's like, so a lot of that happens. Like, I've started to delve into a lot more, self-improvement and just a lot of mindset work and a lot of shifting perspectives and things like that. But there's a couple good quit lit books out there, but what I found that works for me more is the things like Atomic Habits and things that focus more on me and my mindset and how to create those things that I'm looking for in my future.
yeah, I totally agree. And one thing I would notice across all habit change books is they all kind of say to take it small, like do one thing at a time, but do it consistently.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like this person asking what's the best way to start doing the hard work, it's like start really small and start with something that you need to change today. If you want to cut down on drinking, how can you make a micro goal around that? Or if you want to get more exercise, how can you make a micro goal on that? And like Melissa's saying, I think focusing on not only drink reduction stuff, but personal development stuff. Like for me, going back to like my childhood or my dreams from my youth and asking like, what did I really want for myself? Like what really matters to me? And just kind of constantly asking those questions and then doing little things every day that help me to work toward that. And, having the right perspective, realizing it's not going to be an overnight thing, but, if you're consistent with it every day and you keep forging forward, it's going to add up to big results. And one book I always recommend is called The Slight Edge. It's an older book, but it's so good. And it talks about how you can have a slight edge in life. And it just gives the most basic practical ways to kind of approach life in a way that allows us to have that consistency and the results that come from just that cumulative effort over time.
Another one that I really like too is The Miracle Morning.
Never that one.
What I like is that it gives you the opportunity to just kind of set your day with intention, and you can scale it down if you only have 6 minutes or if you have 60 minutes, but you can kind of adapt it to your life. But it helps, it's broken down really well in order to kind of map out your life and create the things you want.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let us know if you have more questions about that. Someone says they cut down their drinking from 100 to 150 drinks per month to about 10 per month. And my sleep is so great. No sleep aids needed. And I sleep all night without waking. It's unreal. That's incredible. That's awesome.
Congratulations. That's exciting.
And then someone's asking, how many hours after first 50 milligram dose might one redose on a binge? The standard redosing time that physicians recommend is 6 to 8 hours. So if someone is drinking, between 6 to 8 hours after their first dose of naltrexone, typically their doctor would advise them to take a second dose and wait another hour and then continue drinking after that. That's just like general what I've heard from TSM doctors. Everyone's an individual, and it definitely depends because people metabolize the medication at different rates. And so definitely ask your doctor more specifically for yourself and what would work well for you. I am a month in and still feel super tired in the mornings. And why are hangovers worse on now?
I don't know about why the hangovers are worse, but I can say it takes more than a month to not be tired all the time, unfortunately. I wish it was an easy answer, but it probably takes a little while, I think, to really get to where you're not super tired all the time.
Well, and something I'll say to that is that I had this belief that as soon as I cut back on my alcohol, that it would be like rainbows and butterflies, because I felt like every sober story I saw online was like, oh, I feel great and I lost 50 pounds. And I'm just like, okay. But I actually felt worse for a little while as I reduced my drinking. I felt like my body really needed rest. I needed to nourish my body because, like I said, we get depleted from alcohol, all of the nutrients. And so as I was becoming less numb all the time, I was becoming more in tune with how bad I actually felt. So I just want to share that 2 cents from my own experience that, if we're tired in the morning, like this person, it may be because of the NAL, or it may be because of the effects we're having on, the effects alcohol is having on our body. Maybe our bodies just need more sleep or rest. And then the hangovers, for some people, they are worse on naltrexone. Eating can help. For me, I would take activated charcoal when I was done drinking at the night to help just absorb the alcohol and naltrexone in my stomach. But for some people, they are worse. That tends to happen most often toward the end of the naltrexone I see for people, because they're drinking less often, and so they're taking the medication less often. But hopefully, being a month in, hopefully those do get better for you. Yeah. Just reading some of the comments. Awesome. Yep. So what's life for you now, Melissa? Because how long has it been since you drank?
Last time I looked, it was over 500 days, 500 something days, because it would have been, October 1st, 2020 was the first day I started my challenge. So I know so October 1st will be 2 years, but man, I can't even explain how much better life is. It's like, I don't know. I was a person who was like, when you see people who are just like genuinely happy, like I used to want to tell those people where to go. I was like, nobody's like that. Nobody's happy like that. No way. And now it's like, you can really be happy. It's attainable. And it just really blows my mind how toxic and controlling alcohol is of our minds. I mean, because it really, it just takes over. It takes over everything, your thoughts, your beliefs about yourself. I mean, it affects everything. And even if you're functioning and going to work, I mean, I was functioning, I went to work every day. That didn't mean that I didn't have a problem or that I was happy. It just meant that, I knew how to truck through a hangover and being dehydrated and still go to work. So, but I mean, I started my own business. I mean, just they're incredible. I'm just so excited from coming from a place in my life of never thinking I would live this long to now just thinking about how many things I still want to experience, and just hoping I have the opportunity to do that, because there's a big world out there.
Oh my gosh, that's so great. And what was just coming to mind for me, it's like the stark contrast of sobriety through TSM versus sobriety through kind of the old way of doing things, where it's like literally one day at a time. And for me, I was like, a relapse must be right around the corner, just kind of battling those cravings all the time.
Yeah.
And
You hear about that all the time. I mean, and unfortunately I think it's what works for you. If that's what works for people, that's fine. But I see so many people who struggle, who haven't tried now, that try other programs, and just um they're bitter and they're angry and they're white knuckling it through cravings. And there's an easier way. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying it's easier. You're still going to have to do the work, but it's like, um, you know, wouldn't you just never want to have to crave alcohol again? I mean, I have zero cravings. I have a liquor cabinet full of alcohol. I could drink any second I wanted to, and I don't. It doesn't bother me being there. I don't care. I mean, the biggest thing that bothers me about other people drinking is my concern for their health and what it's doing to them. If that's your choice, just like it was my choice, and I can't choose for you when to stop doing that, but that's my challenge now. Is my concern with people drinking isn't that they're drinking, it's that I know what it truly does to people, and it's very difficult for me. Especially when it's people you love, because you just want them to understand that it doesn't have a good purpose.
yeah. Yep. That's so well said. Well, oh my gosh, it's been such an awesome conversation with you, Melissa. Thank you so much for coming on with me again. Any last words, final words, wisdom, or anything you just want to share with people watching and who will watch in the future?
I think the biggest thing is just stick with it. Just keep going. Just keep taking that pill. It will come. It will happen. Even if you feel like it won't. I mean, there's a 78% success rate. I think there's a better chance of you being in the 78% than there is in the 12%. So just keep trying, reach out for help if you need it, reach out, ask questions, whatever. But I am so grateful to you, Katie, for inviting me to chat with you again. I love talking about my experience and just sharing if there's anything that can help other people, because I've been there. I know what it's like, but I also know that there's a really just better life out there for all of us.
Yeah. And I can't, I mean, I totally agree. Just to close, like I thought depression and anxiety were just like a normal part of life. And like when I was drinking, I was like, I guess you just always feel this way. But I like can honestly say I very rarely feel those things now. And of course, everyone's different, but it's just, yeah, we don't know how good we can feel until we start to taste it. And it's addicting in some
It is
sense.
addicting. It is that like feeling of just waking up and being happy, and
Not having the ball and chain of alcohol use disorder anymore.
yeah, not planning your whole life around it.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Melissa. It's been awesome to chat with you. Thank you, everyone in the chat who was here, and we'll talk to you again sometime in the future.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.